Hey guys, we're glad that you clicked on this link to watch this video. We hope that it encourages you and helps you in your spiritual growth. But we'd also like to encourage you not to use this as a substitute for church. We believe that it's important for you to gather with the local saints on a regular basis, whether that be here at the church at West Mountain or a church that's close to you. We hope that you enjoy this message. Okay, all right, are you ready this morning? Grab your Bibles and turn to Exodus chapter 13. Exodus chapter 13. We're going to do chapter 13 and chapter 14 today. We've been walking through a series that we've entitled called Finding Purpose in a Broken World. And I challenged you last week to email me, and I'm thankful for all of you that did email me. It was a really, really fun week for me. I was able to correspond with several of you. I know I got some emails last night and yesterday that I haven't responded to, but if I got yours earlier in the week, I have responded to you. And so that's been a really fun exercise for me this week to see how God is speaking to you in your life. And what we're trying to figure out is, what is my calling in this world, in this place? Where does God want me to step into His kingdom and use the giftings and the things that He's just put in me to bring His character and nurture and love and really the kingdom of heaven to here on earth. And so if you remember, the definition that I've been giving you on calling is where God's plan intersects your purpose, your passion, and your capabilities. And so what we're seeing through the story of Moses is that all of these things are beginning to come through and come together. And we're going to get to the place in the story of Moses today that most people are familiar with. You talk about Moses and what God did in his life, and most people are like, they crossed the Red Sea. And we're going to get there today, but I really have been trying to take the time that we've had to get to this place, because there's so many things that happen in the background of Moses' life that get him to what we would call the big moment of his life. And if for you and me this morning, if we're simply looking for the big moment, we probably will never make it there. Okay, I'm not saying that you won't make it there, but I'm telling you what's going to happen is you're looking for the big moment, and we've missed God in all of these little things along the way. And what we're going to see today is that all of these things culminate in the Red Sea crossing and what God is doing in his life. I'm going to preach a little bit differently today. Normally we read all the text and then I go back and give us the points. We're going to read the text as I give you the points this morning. So Exodus chapter 13, beginning in verse 1. If you're there, say I'm there. Here we go. The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both man and of beast, is," say it with me, "mine." One verse to get us going this morning. If you're taking notes, write this down. If God has redeemed us, we belong to Him. If God has redeemed us, we belong to Him. Remember where we are in the story. Israel has been enslaved in Egypt for 430 years, about 400 years, and God has redeemed them out of slavery. And if you think about everything that's happened all the way from the very first part of the story of Moses, when Pharaoh said, I want the males killed. I want to kill all the males. And then God speaks through Moses to give Pharaoh a word and says, "Let Israel go because it is my firstborn." And then God brings all of the plagues into Egypt. And the plague that really, really set everyone over the top was that the firstborn was what? Killed by the death angel. If they had not been, the lintels of the door have not been covered in blood. And so God, in all of this, they brings them out of Egypt into what we would call the desert, close to the desert at this point. And God says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to set aside, consecrate. Set aside every firstborn, whether it is a human or whether it is a beast or whether it is anything. He said, it is mine. And here's what he was telling them. You need to understand that everything that you think that you own, everything you think that you are, belongs to me. Now, once again, let's work through this, okay? There's probably not very many Jews in the room, if any at all. But God has brought us into the story. He has reached out to the Gentiles, that would be me and you, and he would say, along with Israel, his chosen people, that I have made a way to graft into those who would believe in Jesus Christ and the finished work of the cross. I would bring them into the blessing and the representation of Israel. And here's what he says to me and you: I've redeemed you. And if I redeemed you, then you belong to me. And it's an interesting thought for them as they begin to go through the feast and festivals and all the days that they begin to celebrate throughout the Old Testament. And some people celebrate even now, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But all of these feasts, all of these festivals, all of these holidays, and what they're talking about here is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is meant to remind God's people that you are not your own. You have been bought with a price. And if you've been bought with a price, you belong to God. It's interesting to me in the story. Look at verse 11. There's lots happening in verses 3 through 10. Go read that today. Verse 11, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and you shall give it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey, you shall redeem it with a lamb. Go figure, right? Or you will not redeem it. You shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in time to come, your son asks, what does this mean? Remember last week, this is some of the language that we saw last week. You shall say to him, by a strong hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man, the firstborn of the animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first open the womb. But all the firstborn of my sons I what? Redeem. It'll be a mark as your hand and on your frontlets between your eyes. For by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. Now we're going to talk about the Spirit of God off and on through this morning. But what we have come to realize here in the New Testament where we live on this side of the cross is that not now does God consecrate necessarily things and places. Are you with me? In the Old Testament, we would have a temple or we would have a tabernacle where the Spirit of God lives and resides, and we would have these instruments of worship that people would hold high and holy. And now we've come to the New Testament, and here's what God says to us, that you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation for what? My possession. And for you and me today, we're not setting aside holy things or holy places. God has set us aside as holy people for himself. And for 2019 evangelical Christians that live in this world, it is a very difficult thing for us to say that I belong to someone else. Why? Because we are self-willed people. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me where to go. Don't tell me how to act. And God says, yes, I will. Yes, I can. And yes, I have the right to. Amen. Why? Because I've redeemed you. I've given myself as a sacrifice for you. And for you and I this morning, as we look at this text to go, okay, God has redeemed me, but I will do what I want to, is foolishness. I realize that we're talking about calling through these weeks, and there are many that are really frustrated. I don't think that many of you have told me, but I think I see it some in your face that you're frustrated with this series because you don't feel like it's clicking with you. You don't feel like it's really hitting on all cylinders with you. And I would be willing to bet it may be because you have not surrendered yourself to the lordship of Jesus Christ and said, whatever you do and whatever you say about me is final. And I'll take my hands off of it. And too early for an invitation this morning, but maybe what we need to do this morning is say, God, you know what? Because you have redeemed me, because you have shown such great mercy and love to me, I now put myself back into a place where I would say, I belong to you. I'm not the boss anymore. I'm not going to do it my way anymore. And this is what he was trying to speak to Moses, and this is what he was trying to speak to the people of Israel. You're not your own. Jesus would say, you've been bought with a price. Not only would we say, if God has redeemed us, we belong to him. The second thing that I would say to you this morning is this. If we belong to him, we are to be led by him. If we belong to him, we're to be led by him. Look at verse 17 of chapter 13. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea, and the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham and on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. And the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. If we belong to him, we are to be led by him. How is he leading them through this journey? It's right there in the text. They're being led by a cloud during the day, and they're being led by fire during the night. Now listen, I think it would be an incredible thing if we laid a decision that we needed to make before the Lord, and all of a sudden a cloud or a pillar of fire showed up for us. Like, all right, we got plan A, Lord, and we got plan B waiting on you. And all of a sudden, a pillar of fire just shows up on one of them, and we're like, okay, that's the one we're going to go with. God, I'm single, and I'm trying to find a godly mate in this world. Could you give me a pillar of fire type thing? Could you just throw that over their head? Like, I'm going to go out to eat this afternoon. There's going to be lots of people out and about. I'm looking for the pillar of fire. God, I need a job. Here's what I've planned for. Here's what I've desired to do. I need that whole cloud thing. Not the iCloud thing, but the real cloud thing where you show me that this is the job. And wouldn't we love that? Like everyone in the room would be like, yes, I would love for it to go that way. But can I submit to you this morning that you and I have a greater discernment and a greater power that lives inside of us besides an external pillar of fire, an external cloud? That's right. What has Christ given us? He's given us his Holy Spirit. And for most of us, we would rather see the cloud than actually feel the cloud leading us from the inside. We would actually rather see a pillar of fire than be led by the Spirit of God and be people that are on fire. And so what he's saying is, listen, there's going to be a leading that happens, and what's going to happen is that for you and I, it's going to be a draw of God from the inside that says, I want you to go here, I want you to do this, I want you to minister this way, I want you to move to this place, I want you to marry this person, I want you to get this job. And it just freaks us out. This isn't in my notes or in my sermon, but I guess it's in the sermon now. But But I believe that the reason that we don't respond and follow the Spirit that way is because we're so distracted by trying to chase other things. We haven't been still enough, we haven't been quiet enough to be able to discern and hear the voice of God. That there's so much distraction that we live in, and I can imagine that if you begin to follow the leading of the Lord, it would be just like being able to see that fire. It would be just like being able to see that cloud. And God has given us a way and an ability to be led by Him. If we belong to Him, we're led by Him. And really what happens here in the text is kind of pushes against our 2019 evangelical thought and thinking as well, because where does He lead them to? Come on, you're with me. To the where? To the wilderness. But see, God doesn't let His children go into the wilderness, does He? Now you need to read your Bible, because God led them into the wilderness. The Spirit of God, when Jesus was baptized, led Jesus into the wilderness. And for me and you this morning to go, I don't like where I am, I don't like what's going on, you need to understand that God may just lead you into the wilderness. Why is He doing this? Why is He leading them into the wilderness? Look what it says, that Pharaoh was going to let the people go. Verse 17, and God did not lead them by the way of the land for the Philistines, although that was near. God said, lest the people change their mind, they see war, they'll return. But God led the people around the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. Now, can you get this picture in your mind? Like the easiest way to get from point A to point B is how? A straight line. And Scripture tells us the easiest and fastest way for them to get there from Egypt to where God wanted them to go would be a straight line. But through that straight line, where do they have to go through? The land of the Philistines. Now, these are people that had just come out of slavery for years and years and years and years. And I realize that the text says that they were equipped for battle, but they had not ever been in battle. I'll talk about that here a little bit more in just a second. But God says, listen, lest they walk right out of slavery and into battle, they'll be disheartened. Lest they step from here and see my deliverance from Egypt, and then they immediately have to go into war, they will be disheartened. And where will they go? Back to slavery. If you were here last week, I'd thought about titling the sermon, Shut Up and Watch God Work. And we'll get to that point here in just a minute. But I titled the sermon this morning, The Long Way Around. The long way around because a lot of times we want God to take us from point A to point B and things to be done about that fast. But listen to me, the way that God normally works for us is He takes us the long way around. Some of you have been grinding with something for weeks and months and years. And you're like, is this ever going to be over? Listen to me, God might be taking you the long way around. Why? Because the short way would have put you back into a tizzy. As I begin to think about this, what's going to happen in the next several chapters is that God's going to begin to teach them some things about worship. God's going to begin to teach them some things about who He is and how He operates and His character. And He's going to teach them that there's a way that you approach a holy God, and there's going to be a way that He works for you, and it's going to instill and incite worship inside of these people. Listen to me this morning. God needs us to learn to worship before we can go to war. And we got this big bowed out chest. I could have took those Philistines. I was equipped for battle. I mean, it says that in the text, that they were equipped for battle. It doesn't matter if you're equipped or not. If God doesn't want you to go to battle, you'll get your tail kicked. And I just believe if they had stepped into the lands of the Philistines that time, they would have been in there, and there would have been this battle that went on. There would have been this war that went on, and they would have tucked tail and said, hey, but we're going to see it here in a minute. One little thing happens, and they're like, it's better for us to be in Egypt. Better for us to be in Egypt. They step into a land of giants, they'd be like, maybe Egypt wasn't that bad. But if you and I this morning don't go, you know what, I want to hear the Spirit of God in my life. I want to be led by Him. I want to worship God in a way where I know who He is and I know who I am. We will never be led into places. And then sometimes we'll be led into places and we'll just simply ask questions the whole time. Why am I here? Why is this happening? What if? And God's like, I brought you here. And the long way around, I'm learning is always the best way. I was thinking about this because as you and I read this, we kind of get the full glimpse of the story here, right? You and I see that God said, hey, I could have taken them this way, but I took them all the way around into this peninsula where they would actually get hemmed in. Like the largest army in all of the world, the most powerful leader and the most destructive people in all of the world are going to be able to put them on the end of a peninsula and they've got a sea on the other end. Like that's where God led them. That's where God led them. And I began to think about this and I was thinking, you know, God knew, and you and I, by reading the text, know about the Red Sea deliverance and all that. And so we're going, come on, guys, just get it. Come on, just get it, right? But in the moment, like Moses knew this area and he's following this cloud and he's like, I know where this is headed. Like I know this direction. And I can just imagine he's going, God, shouldn't we be going this way? Honest moment. How many of you ever said, God, shouldn't we be going this way? Yeah. Come on, work with me. Listen to me. You have no idea what the long journey is protecting you from. Gosh. You and I this morning have no idea what God's sovereign hand, what we just sang about a while ago. He's sovereign over us. We have no idea this morning what He's protecting us from by taking us on the long route. And would I really rather it just be over quick? Sure, let's pull the Band-Aid. But God says, no, there's a way that's right, and there's a way that needs to be done for you to see more of who I am and and how my provision will take care of you. Like remember what I told you weeks ago. We can't just pick a part out of this story and say, here's what's happening. We've got to see the whole overview of Scripture. He is creating a nation. He is creating, I would say at this point, He's creating a church. He's molding and shaping His people into a way where they would see Him and know Him and trust Him. And here's what you and I really need to log down. I know I said we need to learn to worship before we need to go to war. But here's the other thing, that we need to see that God will fight for us before we begin to fight for God. Like God doesn't need you to protect Him. I think it was either C.S. Lewis or Charles Spurgeon, and he said it this way. Somebody look it up and tell me later, okay? They said that the Bible doesn't need to be defended. The Bible is like a lion. You don't defend a lion. You just turn it loose. Listen to me. You don't have to defend God. You don't have to defend what He's doing in the world. You just turn Him loose. And then we watch God work. You with me? All right. If God's redeemed us, we belong to Him. If we belong to Him, we are to be led by Him. Okay? And number 3, if we are led by Him, we have nothing to fear. The progression is here. The progression is in the text. If we're led by Him, we have nothing to fear. Flip to chapter 14, because this is what we would call, the big moment in Moses' life. Chapter 14, beginning in verse 1, then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of that place, between that place and the sea, in front of that place as well. And you shall encamp facing it by the sea. I've learned not to make a fool of myself. You can read it. See how it comes out in your mind. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land. The wilderness has shut them in, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all of his host, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so. Now let's just pause right there and make sure that we've got the right setting of what's going on here. Okay, the people of Israel, the children of Israel, have just walked out of Egypt. Remember how they walked out? With some swagger. They were loaded to the gills with gold and silver and fine jewelry, so much that they had to load it on their kids. Right? That's what the text says. And so they walk out like that, but they didn't walk out like that just by themselves. They walked out like that because God said, I'm gonna make sure that Pharaoh drives you out so fast because he's going to be so furious. And why? Because kids had died. Now, imagine this with me, once again, my fairly sanctified imagination. That they're out there and they're camped out. And they're going, can you believe this? Look at all of this gold. Look at all of the silver. Look at all of the fine things that we just walked out with. And in my mind, they're in kind of this desert setting. And sometimes in desert, there's dust devils. You with me? And so I can imagine they're all like, oh my goodness, and they're in this joyous moment where they've just plundered Egypt, and all of a sudden like, is that a dust devil over there? Oh man, I hope it doesn't come this way. And all of a sudden the sound of that changes. And there is some dust flying, but it's not from a dust devil. Look at the rest of this. When the king of Egypt was told the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants were changed toward the people. What is this we've done that they have said to let Israel go from serving us? So he made ready his chariot and took an army with him and took, listen to this, 600 chosen chariots. This is like the Navy SEALs. 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots and all the other officers with them. So you've got the Navy SEALs out front, and then every branch of our government, of a military force right after that. Somebody's in trouble. Listen to me, these aren't just men who are going to do a job that Pharaoh told them to do. These are men that have just lost children at home. Okay, this isn't just I'm obeying orders. This is I've got revenge in my heart. And all of a sudden, there's this moment where these people go, oh my goodness. Verse 10, when Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. And get this, they feared greatly, and the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. You ever been in one of those moments of fear where there was like literally vocal things coming out of you? Like someone scared you and you screamed. Or there's this moment where there's so much turmoil and fear and you don't know what's going to be next, where all of a sudden things are just coming out and it's verbalized and it's verbalized and it's verbalized. Look at the rest of what happens. And Moses said, they said to Moses, is it because there's no graves in Egypt that you've taken us away to die in the wilderness? Isn't it amazing how fast they changed their mind? What have you done in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said of you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we'll serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Here's what fear begins to do in our lives. Fear begins to make us say irrational things. Like, do you think they really enjoyed Egypt? You really think they love being under a taskmaster? You really think they enjoyed making bricks all day long? Like, if I'm going to make bricks all day long, it's going to be to build my own house, but I'm not going to do it to build Pharaoh's kingdom. And there's this moment where all of a sudden fear begins to creep back into their lives. And here's what I believe that is happening. That fear is beginning to close their spiritual and their physical eyes. Oh gosh, what are we going to do? We should have just died in Egypt. Been there? What's Moses say? He said to the people, fear not, stand firm, and what? See. See the salvation of the Lord, which he will do for you today. Fear closes our eyes. Faith opens our eyes. Fear makes us look in tunnel vision. All I can see is this moment and this thing that's happening. Faith says, look, here's God's plan. Fear would make us cry out and go, oh gosh, why have you forsaken us? Why are we going to die? Why are we going to be here? Faith would make us shut up and say, man, God's got to do something or we're going to bind. And I think that many times that when we're backed up against the wall and we believe that we're being led by God, we're good Christians, right? We show up at church, we do all the things, but yet we still are not operating in a life that is full of faith. We're still operating in lives of fear. What if? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. As I thought about this, I thought about the transition that's happened in Moses' life. See, you remember when Moses walked into Pharaoh's court and Pharaoh said, who's the Lord that I would obey him? I don't even know this Lord. Matter of fact, you've kind of ticked me off today. And now the Egyptians don't have to, the Israelites don't just have to make bricks. They've actually got to go get their own straw and make their own bricks. And I want the same amount of bricks. Like, uh-oh. And then what do the Israelites say to Moses? Man, you've made us stink in the eyes of Pharaoh. Not only do we stink in the eyes of Pharaoh, but his sword is at our neck. What are we going to do? And then Moses responds to the Lord, oh God, why have you forsaken these people? There's this transition that's happened in Moses' life, and now he's standing upon the brink of really the biggest challenge of all his life. An Egyptian army, a bunch of whining Israelites that are mad at him in this moment. And how does he respond? He says, shut up and watch the Lord work today. Fear not, stand firm, see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. What a statement. The Lord will fight for you. You only have to be silent. That's the shut up part. What was it that changed Moses from remember several weeks ago, martyr syndrome Moses? What was it that changed Moses from this whining, insignificant, unconfident leader to this guy that's looking at a couple million Israelites and looking at a couple million Egyptians going, hey, listen, we're fixing to get killed, but you need to be quiet because God's fixing to do something. What was it that got him to that point where he would say, I'm being led by the Lord, I hear the Lord's voice, but I will not operate in fear? What was it that got him there? Here's what I believe. I believe it was the day he walked by a bush. And it was a simple act of obedience to look and turn to the bush. I believe it was the day that God said, hey, I want you to go back to Egypt. And through some conversation and some coaxing, he went back to Egypt. I believe it was this conversation with God where he said, hey, throw your staff on the ground. And he did it. And a conversation with God where he said, stick your hand inside your coat. I believe it was a conversation with God where he said 10 different times, you go to Pharaoh and you tell him this. See, it's what I told you at the beginning. We're looking for that big moment where God says, hey, stretch your staff over the Red Sea and part it. We're looking for that moment, but we're missing the moment where God says, hey, well, you just want to sit and talk for a minute? Hey, can you come close and I'll show you my power? Hey, Moses, what's that in your hand? Will you use that for my glory? I think it's these little moments all the way through his life that has built his faith, and he has operated in fear and he has operated in doubt, but God has proven himself over and over and over again. And he gets to this place where God says, you're really, really going to have to trust me on this one, Moses. I'm backing you into a corner, and if I don't get you out of the corner, you're dead. Moses, will you trust me? I am not going to operate in fear. I'm going to stand. I'm going to see the salvation of the Lord. I'm going to watch him work, and those people who are trying to come against me, I will never see again. So here's what I believe. I believe there's for all of us in here this morning, there is something in front of us right now. Like there's a faith decision in front of all of us right now. And many of you are wrestling with that faith decision, and that's awesome. But there's some of us in here that are going, all right, that seems small and insignificant. Get me to something bigger, God. God's like, no. This moment will teach you something about me. And listen, fact of the matter is, if you aren't willing to turn aside and talk to me for a minute, why would you turn and talk to me in the midst of this? God, I need you to move in a certain way right here in a great and powerful way. And God's like, I just want you to trust me with today. And if you can't trust God with today, why would we trust him in the future with something that's absolutely large and crazy? And God built faith into Moses into smaller acts of faith and trusting God. And if you ask me, the crossing of the Red Sea wasn't his defining moment. I know that's what we like to think, right? That's his defining moment. That wasn't his defining moment. I believe those defining moments came when he was alone with God. So how do we this morning not operate in fear? We spend time alone with God. God, show me, just me and you. Show me your power. Show me how you want to work in my life. God, teach me to hear your voice. God, give me something small to be obedient in, and I'll do it. The question is this morning, what is it that's in front of you right now? Like today, this moment that God says, do this. See, it's this decision that may be for you today that may pave the way for something dramatic like the Red Sea next week. But if we aren't willing to trust God right now, right here, today, why do we believe that we would do it in a week? Why do we believe that we would do it in a month? The story continues, and I don't think I've got to tell you the end of the story. The people are like, all right, well, we got to do something quick. And then the thing that was leading them, the pillar of cloud and of fire, moves from in front of them and moves in between them and their enemy. And God says, in the midst of obedience, in the midst of trusting me, I'm going to put a little protection between you and the enemy. And the people begin to walk across on dry ground. Like, I don't think the tide moved. I don't think this was a low-level marsh. I think this was a deep, deep sea. And God begins to move in power and brings a wind and begins to separate this sea. And they walk across, and all day long, all night long, they cross this sea. And they turn around and look, and there's the ensuing army coming at them full force. They get in the middle of it. Confusion begins to happen. Their wheels get bogged in the mud. Interesting, right? And all of a sudden, God closes in and does exactly what he said he was going to do. There's this moment, I believe, that happens in all of our journeys where we beg and we plead and the Lord equips us and the Lord speaks to us and we begin to operate in obedience and we've overcome fear. And I think that there's some times that we go back to the Lord, sometimes we go, are you sure? Are you sure? And I love this thing so much. Look at verse 15. Chapter 14, verse 15. If you've already closed your Bibles, you can look at it on the screen. And the Lord says to Moses, why do you cry to me? Why Moses, this is the ETV, the Eric Trimble version. This is my translation of this. Moses, why are we still talking about this? Moses, this thing has already been settled between you and I. If you will trust me in faith, if you will act in obedience, then the things that I've said will come to pass. Tell the people to move on. Listen to me this morning. There are times that we continually go to the Lord and he's like, are we talking about this again? I've already told you to move forward. Like, oh, but we should petition the Lord. Like if he gave you an answer, why do you need another answer? And I think that there are times that our walk with the Lord is hindered because we've so spiritualized all this. And God's like, I told you yes. I'm not changing my mind about the yes. We may not be getting there as fast as you think we should get there, and we may not be getting there by the means that you think we're going to get there, but listen, son, we're going to get there. Why are you still crying out to me? Move forward. And listen, I hope this is just maybe just a little spiritual kick in the pants today. Some of you just need to move forward. The Lord's already told you what to do, so do it. It's amazing how this works out. Verse 31. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians. Duh. Like I read this and I'm like, this isn't here for anybody except me. But because God says, listen, I did what I said I was going to do. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians. Now look at the rest of the verse. So the people did what? Feared the Lord. Feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. Listen to me. About a day before, who were they afraid of? The Egyptians. About a day before, their fear was focused on what was coming. And when God operated and worked in great power, their focus of fear changed. Listen to me. I'm not talking about fear that like, oh my gosh, God's going to crush us or kill us. But a fear that says, oh my goodness, how big of a God do I serve? And the question for us this morning, what are we going to focus on? Have you been redeemed? Come on, I'm asking questions. Have you been redeemed? Yes. Then you're to be his. Are you his? Yes. Then you need to be being led by him. Are you being led by him? Those yeses trickled off a little bit, didn't they? If you're not being led by him, that's why you're still in fear. And this morning, we can just say, God, I just want to submit myself back. It's not if he will lead us. Listen to me, because he's leading. There's a good friend of mine, and I send my sermon outline. I've been sending my sermon outline to him over the past several weeks, and we've just kind of been group studying together. And so I've got to give him credit for this. He said, it's not if God will lead us. It's the words of Jesus when he says, follow me. You don't have to question this morning if God will lead you. The question this morning is, will you follow his leadership? Will you submit to what he wants to do in your life? Will you handle the thing that's in front of you right now? Right now. And in my heart, as I feel those yeses and I hear those yeses trickle off, it makes much greater sense to me why we operate in so much fear. And this morning, if God has convicted your heart, and I would beg with you, I would plead with you this morning that you would not refuse that conviction. That you would fall on your face and you would say, God, I want to trust you. God, I want to believe. And I would say with the man and his daughter, I believe, but help my unbelief.